The Velthari Dominion had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their empire covered 900 worlds across the galaxy. They had crushed every species that tried to stand against them. When their scout ships found radio signals coming from a small blue planet in a quiet corner of space, High Commander Zorth laughed. He called the creatures there primitives. He said they were barely worth noticing. Earth had just built its first ship that could travel faster than light. The exploration vessel Endurance was on its first voyage to Alpha Centauri. Captain Samuel Wright stood on the bridge with pride in his heart. He was a former Navy pilot from Virginia who had served for 30 years. This was supposed to be humanity's greatest moment. They were finally reaching for the stars. Then the Velthari interceptors surrounded them. The alien ships were massive and covered in dark metal. They blocked out the starlight. A harsh voice came through the communication system, demanding immediate surrender. Samuel tried to talk to them. He tried to explain that they came in peace. He tried to negotiate. The Velthari responded by destroying the Endurance. 400 men and women died in an instant. The aliens recorded everything and sent the footage to Earth as a warning. In Houston, Dr. Catherine Moore watched the recording from Mission Control. She was the lead engineer on the Faster Than Light project. She had spent her whole life dreaming of this moment. She was a quiet woman from Nebraska who loved science more than anything else in the world. When the transmission ended, she sat in silence for a long time. She removed her glasses and cleaned them slowly. Then she spoke 5 words that would echo through history. They just made a mistake. Within hours, the United Nations Security Council held an emergency meeting. Leaders from every nation gathered in New York. Fear filled the room. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to hide and hoped the aliens would leave them alone. Then the Velthari ambassador arrived. His name was Vexenar. He was a towering reptilian creature with scales the color of dried blood. His eyes had no warmth in them. He walked into the chamber like he owned it already. Behind him came 2 guards carrying weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Vexenar delivered his terms. Humanity would become a servant species. They would work in mines and factories for their new masters. Earth would be stripped of its resources. The human population would be reduced to a manageable number. Those who resisted would be destroyed. Admiral Benjamin Cole listened to every word. He was a weatherman from Texas who had served in 3 wars. He had seen terrible things in his life. He had buried friends and watched cities burn. But he had never felt anger like this before. When Vexenar finished speaking, Benjamin stood up slowly. The room went quiet. "You killed 400 of our people today," Benjamin said. His voice was calm but cold. Men and women who went into space with nothing but curiosity and hope. They wanted to explore. They wanted to learn. They meant you no harm. Vexenar made a clicking sound with his mandibles. It might have been laughter. They were insignificant. As are you all. Your species is young and weak. You have no place in the galaxy except to serve those who are stronger. Benjamin smiled. It was not a friendly expression. It was the smile of a man who had made a decision. "Ambassador, your species has clearly never studied human history. Allow me to educate you." He slid a data chip across the table. That contains records of every war humanity has ever fought. Every genocide we have survived. Every time someone tried to destroy us and we came back stronger. We have been killing each other for 100,000 years. We are very good at it. Vexenar picked up the chip. He connected it to a device on his wrist. As he read the information, the amusement faded from his posture. His scales shifted color slightly. His guards exchanged nervous glances. The data showed everything. The world wars that killed millions. The ancient empires that rose and fell. The weapons of mass destruction that humans had created. The concentration camps and the atomic bombs. The endless cycle of violence that had shaped human civilization. We did not go to the stars looking for a fight, Benjamin continued. We went because we were curious, because we wanted to know if we were alone, because we dreamed of something greater than ourselves. He leaned forward across the table. But you just gave us a fight. And you should understand something about humans, Ambassador. We do not surrender. We do not forget. And we absolutely do not forgive. Vexnod tried to respond, but Benjamin kept talking. You see us as primitives, soft creatures who will break easily. That is because you have never faced anything like us before. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We survived ice ages and plagues and predators with teeth longer than your arm. We climbed to the top of the food chain, not because we were the strongest or the fastest, but because we never gave up. He pointed at the data chip. Every species on that list that tried to destroy us is now part of the dust. The empires that attacked us are forgotten. The enemies who underestimated us are gone, and we are still here. Catherine Moore stood up from her seat in the corner of the room. She'd have been watching quietly until now. Admiral Cole is right. You have made a terrible mistake today. You could have left us alone. You could have ignored our little planet and our little ships and our little dreams. She walked toward Vexenar. Despite being half his height, she did not seem afraid. Instead, you killed our people and broadcast it to our world. You united every nation on Earth against a common enemy for the first time in human history. You gave us a reason to stop fighting each other and start fighting you. Vexenar stepped back. For the first time, something like doubt crossed his alien features. Return to your masters, Benjamin said. Tell them what you have learned. Tell them that humanity accepts their declaration of war. Tell them that we are coming for them. He paused at the door. And tell them they should have left us alone. The Velthari delegation left Earth that night. They carried with them the data chip and a message for High Commander Zorth. They told him everything they had heard and seen. Zorth dismissed their concerns. Humans were mammals, he said. Soft and weak and short-lived. They would be crushed within months. He had no idea what was coming. Across Earth, humanity began to prepare. Factories that had made cars started making weapons. Scientists who had studied medicine started studying alien biology. Soldiers who had fought each other began training to fight together. The giant was waking up, and it was angry. The survivors of the Battle of Earth expected humanity to stay home. They expected the humans to rebuild their cities and repair their ships and wait for the next attack. They expected them to negotiate, to seek peace, to be satisfied with survival. They did not understand what they had awakened. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Benjamin Cole addressed the United Human Fleet. Behind him, through the viewport of the Defiance, shipyards were already building new vessels. Factories worked around the clock producing weapons and armor. Recruitment centers could not process volunteers fast enough. Humanity was not preparing to defend. Humanity was preparing to attack. They came to our home, Cole said to the assembled officers. His voice was calm, but carried a weight that made everyone listen. They burned our cities. They killed millions of our people. They tried to wipe us from existence. He paused and looked at the faces before him, young and old, men and women. People who had lost everything and were ready to fight for something. We are going to make sure they never threaten anyone again. Operation Reclamation began 6 months later. Human fleets struck Velthari outposts across the Orion Arm. They did not try to conquer. They did not try to occupy. They simply destroyed every military installation, every weapons factory, every facility that could support the Velthari war machine. The aliens had never faced anything like it. For 12,000 years, they had been the predators. Now they were the prey. Nicole Grant, now promoted to admiral, led the assault on the Velthari fortress world of Keth Prime. The planet was defended by 2,000 warships. Orbital defense platforms circled it like a ring of steel. No enemy had ever breached those defenses in the history of the Dominion. Nicole breached them. In 4 hours, her tactics confused the Velthary commanders. She used their own captured vessels against them, broadcasting false identification codes that made them hesitate to fire. She launched waves of decoy drones that overwhelmed their tracking systems. She sent small teams to board key ships and turn their weapons against their own fleet. When the orbital defenses fell, Nicole led the assault personally. Her ship, the Phoenix, dove through clouds of debris and weapons fire. Her pilots followed her into hell without question. "Admiral, we are taking heavy damage," her executive officer reported. "We should pull back and regroup." Nicole shook her head. "We do not stop. We do not slow down. We hit them so hard, they forget how to fight back." By the time the sun set on Keth Prime, the fortress world had fallen. Human troops landed on the surface and captured the military headquarters. Velthary soldiers surrendered by the thousands. They had never surrendered before. They did not know how, but they were learning. Across the galaxy, other human fleets were winning similar victories. General Daniel Rivera led ground forces that liberated 3 worlds that the Velthary had enslaved. The species they freed joined humanity's alliance eagerly. They had waited centuries for someone to stand against the Dominion. Dr. Catherine Moore coordinated the scientific efforts that kept human technology advancing. Every captured ship taught them something new. Every battle showed them another weakness to exploit. The gap between human and Velthary capability was closing fast, but perhaps the most important work was being done by Dr. Victor Haynes. The quiet xenobiologist had become one of the most important people in the war. His research into the Velthary hive mind had given humanity a devastating weapon. Now he was looking for something even more powerful. "Their connection is not just communication," Victor explained to Admiral Cole during a strategy meeting. "It is their identity. It is how they understand themselves. A Velthary alone is not really a Velthary at all. They are fragments of a larger consciousness. Can we use that against them?" Cole asked. "We already do. The disruptors work. But I am looking for something bigger." Victor pulled up a diagram on the display screen. Their central consciousness has a source, a neural network on their homeworld that connects every Velthary in the galaxy. If we could disrupt that network permanently, we could end the war without firing another shot. Victor nodded slowly. Or we could destroy them completely. The choice would be ours. Cole thought about that for a long time. The weight of billions of lives pressed down on him. Meanwhile, the Velthary government was falling apart. High Commander Zorath had been removed from power after the disaster at Earth. The new leadership was desperate. They sent envoys to negotiate surrender. Admiral Cole met them in the ruins of their largest military academy on Keth Prime. General Rivera stood beside him with soldiers who had fought their way across a dozen worlds. The human warriors looked at the Velthary delegates with cold eyes. "You wish to discuss terms," the Velthary envoy said. His name was Tarvik, and he had once been a minor official in the Dominion's diplomatic corps. Now he was all they had left. "We are prepared to make significant concessions. Territory, resources, reparations, prisoner exchanges." Cole listened without expression. "Do you remember what your ambassador told us on Earth? The one called Vexenar? He said we were insignificant." Tarvik's scales shifted nervously. A regrettable statement. "Made in error. We did not understand your species. It was not a mistake. It was what you believed. What you still believe, deep down. Your species has spent 12,000 years treating every other form of life as insignificant, as tools to be used, as resources to be consumed." Cole stepped closer to the envoy. "We are going to demonstrate a different approach. What do you want?" Tarvik asked. There was fear in his voice now. Real fear. "We want your weapons dismantled." We want your war criminals tried. We want every species you have enslaved to be freed. We want reparations paid to every world you have harmed. That would destroy our empire." "Your empire is already destroyed," Cole said. "We destroyed it. The question now is what comes next." He turned and walked toward the door. "You have 1 month to accept these terms. After that, we come for your homeworld." Tarvik stood in the ruined building and watched the humans leave. He understood now what his people had done. They had not just attacked the young species. They had awakened something ancient and terrible. Humans were not conquerors by nature. They were explorers, dreamers, builders. But when someone threatened their homes and their families, they became something else entirely. The Velthari had created their own extinction event, and now they had to decide whether to accept destruction or surrender. The deadline passed without a response. Human fleets began moving toward the Velthari homeworld. The final battle was approaching. In her office on Earth, Dr. Catherine Moore looked at the stars and thought about everything that had happened. Millions dead. Cities destroyed. Children who would grow up without parents. She thought about what came next. About the choice humanity would have to make. They could destroy the Velthari completely. Wipe them from the galaxy the way the Velthari had planned to wipe out humanity. It would be justice. It would be revenge. It would be safe. Or they could choose something harder. Catherine did not know which path they would take. But she knew that whatever humanity decided would define them for centuries to come. The fleet moved toward Vel Prime. The final reckoning was at hand. The first year of the war was brutal. The Velthari invasion force swept through human colonial outposts with ease. Their ships were faster and their weapons were stronger. Mars fell in 3 days. The lunar bases held for a week before they were destroyed. Humanity was pushed back to Earth. Their fleet was reduced to scattered groups hiding in asteroid fields. Millions of people died in those early months. Cities burned across the planet. The Velthari bombed from orbit without mercy. They destroyed military bases and civilian centers alike. They did not care about the difference, but something was happening that the aliens failed to notice. Humanity was changing. They were adapting. They were learning. Lieutenant Commander Nicole Grant led a small squadron operating from the debris field of the destroyed Jupiter station. She was 28 years old and had grown up in Oregon. Her parents and her 2 brothers had died when the Velthari bombed Portland. She had nothing left except her ship and her rage. Her squadron had only 12 fighters. They were old and slow compared to Velthari vessels. But in 6 months, they had destroyed 47 enemy ships. They used tactics the aliens had never seen before. They hid in asteroid shadows and struck without warning. They played dead and then came back to life at the worst possible moment. They fought dirty because clean fighting meant death. Nicole understood something the Velthari did not. Humans were hunters who had evolved on a dangerous world. Their ancestors had chased animals across African plains until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They were persistent predators. They never stopped coming. "They think we are weak because we bleed," Nicole told her pilots before a raid. "They do not understand that we have always bled. We have always suffered. We have always died. And we have always kept fighting anyway." Her words spread through the resistance. They became a rallying cry for humanity. On Earth, Dr. Catherine Moore led a team of scientists in a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. They had captured a damaged Velthari vessel during a battle over the Pacific Ocean. Now they were taking it apart piece by piece. They were learning its secrets. Catherine had not slept more than 4 hours at a time in 8 months. Her eyes were red and her hands shook from too much coffee. But she refused to stop. Every day the war continued, more humans died. She needed to find something that could turn the tide. Her breakthrough came on an ordinary Tuesday morning. She was studying the alien shield generators when she noticed something strange. The shields operated on quantum frequencies that could be disrupted with properly tuned electromagnetic pulses. Their weapons drew power from central cores that were connected across their fleet. If those cores were overloaded, the damage would spread from ship to ship. Catherine stared at her calculations for a long time. Then she picked up her communicator and called Admiral Cole. "We can hurt them," she said. "We can hurt them very badly." Meanwhile, in the forests of Montana, Sergeant First Class Daniel Rivera was training a new kind of soldier. He was 42 years old and had grown up on a ranch outside of Billings. He had served in 3 ground wars before the invasion. He knew how to fight in ways that no textbook could teach. His trainees learned guerrilla tactics. They learned how to move through forests without making a sound. They learned how to build weapons from scraps and set traps that would kill without warning. They learned urban warfare and hand-to-hand combat. But Daniel was teaching them something else too. Something the Velthari had never faced before. They are telepathic, Daniel explained to his unit. They share thoughts and feelings across their hive structure. When one of them experiences something, the others feel it too. He smiled grimly. We are going to use that against them. When we kill one of their soldiers, we are not just removing one enemy. We are sending fear through their entire network. When we destroy their outposts, we are planting nightmares in 1,000,000 alien minds. The humans began to wage psychological warfare. They left messages for the Velthari to find. They recorded the screams of dying aliens and broadcast them on enemy frequencies. They made the invaders afraid to sleep. High Commander Zorath started receiving reports that confused him. Human casualties were enormous, but his own losses were climbing faster than expected. His supply lines were being attacked constantly. Convoys disappeared without a trace. Outposts went silent in the middle of the night. Worst of all, his soldiers were becoming afraid. The Velthari had conquered 37 species. None of them had fought like this. None of them had adapted so quickly. None of them had made Velthari warriors wake up screaming from nightmares about soft little mammals with fire in their eyes. Fleet. Master Caravel approached Zorath during a war council. Commander, I believe we have made an error. These creatures are not like the others we have faced. They do not break. They do not surrender. They learn from every battle and come back stronger. Zorath struck him across the face. They are only animals. Primitive creatures who will be crushed under our feet. We will increase our forces. We will overwhelm them with pure power. Commander, our forces are already stretched thin. If we commit more resources here and fail, we will not fail. Zorath's eyes burned with anger. Send word to the homeworld. I want every available ship sent to this system. We will gather the largest fleet in the history of the Dominion. We will reduce their planet to ash. Caravel bowed and left to carry out the order. He did not share his commander's confidence. He had studied the human data that Vexnar had brought back. He had seen what these creatures had done to each other throughout their history, and he was beginning to understand why they might do far worse to an enemy that had attacked their home across the galaxy. Velthari ships began moving toward Earth, thousands of vessels carrying millions of soldiers. Enough firepower to destroy a dozen worlds. High Commander Zorath was building the hammer that would crush humanity once and for all. He did not realize that humanity was counting on exactly that dot in her bunker. Catherine Moore received intelligence reports about the gathering fleet. She smiled for the first time in months. They are bringing everything, she told her team. Perfect. That means we only have to win once. Admiral Cole began moving the pieces of a plan that had been forming since the war began. Nicole Grant gathered the scattered human fleet from their hiding places. Daniel Rivera finished training his soldiers and moved them into position. Earth prepared for the battle that would decide everything. The trap was ready. All they needed now was for the Valkyrie to walk into it. 2 years into the war, the Valkyrie prepared their final assault on Earth. High Commander Zorath had gathered the largest fleet in his empire's history. 15,000 warships filled the space around the human solar system. 3 million ground troops waited in transport vessels. They carried enough weapons to turn the blue planet into a ball of molten rock. Zorath stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the tiny world on his view screen. He felt nothing but contempt. These mammals had caused him more trouble than any species in Valkyrie history. They had embarrassed him in front of his superiors. They had made his soldiers afraid. They had turned what should have been a simple conquest into a 2-year nightmare. Today, all of that would end. Begin the approach, Zorath commanded. Show no mercy. Leave nothing alive. The Valkyrie fleet descended on Earth like a storm of metal and fire. Admiral Benjamin Cole watched them coming on the tactical display aboard the carrier, Defiance. The ship was humanity's new flagship. It had been built in secret over the past year, hidden in underground shipyards that the Valkyrie had never found. Every piece of stolen alien technology had been built into its frame. Commander Patricia Long stood beside him. She was a former submarine captain from Connecticut, known for staying calm when everything was falling apart. Her eyes moved across the display, counting enemy ships. "They brought everything," she said. "Every ship they have. Every soldier." Cole nodded slowly. "That is exactly what we wanted." He picked up his communicator and spoke clearly. "All units, this is Admiral Cole. Operation Reckoning is a go." Repeat, Operation Reckoning is a go. Across the solar system, human forces began to move. The battle for Earth began at dawn on June 17th, 2157. The Valkyrie fleet entered orbit expecting minimal resistance. They had crushed the human navy in the first months of the war. They knew that humanity had only a few hundred ships left, hiding somewhere in the asteroid belts. They were wrong. The first surprise was the minefield. Thousands of cloaked devices activated as the fleet crossed into Earth's orbital space. Each device carried a version of Catherine Moore's electromagnetic disruptor. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the Valkyrie formation, shields flickered and died. Ships that had been invincible moments before were suddenly naked. Weapons systems went offline. Navigation computers crashed. Panic spread through the fleet as crews scrambled to understand what was happening. Zorath screamed orders from his bridge. "What is this? What have they done?" Before anyone could answer, the second surprise arrived. Admiral Nicole Grant led a fleet of 300 human vessels out of hiding in the asteroid belt. Every ship carried weapons designed by Catherine Moore's team. Weapons built specifically to exploit the weaknesses they had discovered in Valkyrie technology. Nicole's voice came through the communication channel, cold and clear. "All fighters, this is Grant. Weapons free. Make them pay for everyone we have lost." The human fleet hit the Valkyrie flanks like wolves tearing into a wounded animal. Missiles found unshielded hulls. Energy weapons cut through armor that had once been impenetrable. Ship after ship exploded as the humans attacked with a fury that stunned the invaders. The Valkyrie tried to reorganize. They had superior numbers. They had more powerful ships. But their shields were gone and their networks were scrambled. They could not coordinate. They could not communicate. They were a giant stumbling in the dark while smaller. Predators tore at its legs. Then, the third surprise came. Valkyrie transport ships began landing their troops on Earth. 3 million soldiers poured out onto the surface, expecting to overwhelm human defenders through sheer numbers. They found something very different waiting for them. General Daniel Rivera had spent 2 years preparing for this moment. Every city had been turned into a fortress. Every forest hid traps. Every road was mined. Every building had firing positions and escape routes. The Velthari advanced into the ruins of Los Angeles and walked into hell. Buildings collapsed on their columns. Snipers fired from impossible positions and vanished before return fire could find them. Soldiers who survived the initial attacks found themselves hunted through dark streets by humans who moved like ghosts. "They cannot see us," Daniel told his troops through encrypted channels. "They cannot hear us. They cannot predict us. We are the nightmare they brought on themselves." Human casualties were heavy. For every Velthari soldier killed, humans died too. But they kept fighting. They would not stop. They could not stop. And then came the fourth surprise. The most devastating of all. Dr. Victor Haynes was a xenobiologist from Georgia. He was a quiet man who wore sweater vests and had spent his career studying alien life forms. When the war began, he was assigned to analyze Velthari biology. What he discovered changed everything. The Velthari hive mind was not just a way to communicate. It was a biological necessity. Individual Velthari could not function without the psychic connection to their collective. Cut them off from the hive, and they fell into something like a coma. Victor had developed a signal that could disrupt that connection. Not permanently, not across the whole species, but locally, in concentrated bursts. It could silence the voices in Velthari heads. As the battle raged, humanity activated the disruptors. The effect was immediate. Velthari soldiers froze in the middle of combat, their minds suddenly cut off from everything they had ever known. Pilots lost control of their ships and drifted into each other. Commanders stopped giving orders because they could no longer think clearly enough to speak. On his flagship, High Commander Zorath felt the silence crash into his mind like a wave of ice. One moment, he could feel the presence of millions of his people. The next moment, there was nothing. Just cold, empty darkness. He collapsed to the deck, gasping for air, his consciousness flailing in the void. The Battle of Earth lasted 18 hours. When it ended, humanity had captured or destroyed 80% of the Velthari invasion force. The remaining ships fled toward their home systems, broadcasting warnings on every frequency. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge of the Defiance and watched the enemy retreat. His uniform was stained with smoke and blood. He had not slept in 3 days. Patricia Long approached him carefully. "Sir, we did it. We won." Cole shook his head slowly. "No, Commander. We survived. The war is not over." He looked at the stars where the Velthari had fled. "They came to our home. They tried to destroy us, and they failed. Now they know that we can beat them. Now they know that they made a terrible mistake." He turned to face his crew, men and women who had fought and bled and watched friends die. Humans who had been pushed to the edge of extinction and refused to fall. "Signal all commands," Cole said. "The defense of Earth is complete. Prepare for the next phase." Nicole Grant's voice crackled through the communication system. "What is the next phase, Admiral?" Cole's expression was hard as stone. "We go after them. We find their worlds. We make sure they can never threaten anyone ever again." The message spread across what remained of the human fleet. Across Earth, across the colonies that had survived the invasion. Humanity was done defending. Now they were going to hunt. The final campaign against the Velthari homeworld took 2 years to prepare. Humanity built a fleet larger than anything that had ever existed. They gathered allies from the 12 species that the Velthari had enslaved over thousands of years. They developed weapons that made their earlier technology look like toys. When the fleet finally arrived at Velprime, it blocked out the stars. 17,000 human and allied vessels surrounded a planet of 9 billion souls. Every defense had been destroyed. Every warship had been captured or scattered. The Veltri species waited for the end. Dr. Catherine Moore stood in the command center of the flagship Resolution. She was no longer just a scientist. The people of Earth had elected her Secretary General of the United Government. She had become the voice of humanity. Admiral Benjamin Cole stood beside her, along with General Daniel Rivera, Admiral Nicole Grant, and Dr. Victor Haynes. These were the people who had brought humanity from the edge of extinction to this moment of total victory. They had earned the right to make the final decision. Catherine looked down at the blue-green world on the view screen. 9 billion lives. Mothers and children. Workers and artists. Beings who had never fired a weapon or given an order in the war. Beings who had simply been born into a society that told them they were superior to all others. We could end them, she said quietly. Every ship in this fleet has weapons pointed at their cities. A few hours of bombardment, and an ancient civilization would cease to exist. No one disagreed with her. Many humans wanted exactly that. The Veltri had killed millions. They had tried to enslave humanity. They had shown no mercy and asked for none. Justice demanded annihilation. But if we do, Catherine continued, we become exactly what they were. Conquerors, destroyers, the monsters that other species fear and hate. She turned to face her colleagues. We did not go to the stars for this. We went because we wanted to explore, to discover, to find out if we were alone in the universe. Admiral Cole spoke carefully. They would not show us the same mercy. If our positions were reversed, they would wipe us out without a second thought. I know, Catherine said. That is exactly why we must be different. She walked to the communications console. I am going to address them, and I am going to address our own people at the same time. Everyone needs to hear this. Catherine opened a channel that broadcast to every ship in the fleet, to every receiver on Vel Prime, to Earth and every human colony, to the allied worlds that had joined their cause. People of the Veltri Dominion, she began. Her voice was steady and clear. Your military forces have been eliminated. Your empire has fallen. By the laws of conquest that your species created, we have the right to destroy you completely. She paused to let those words sink in. We choose not to exercise that right. Silence fell across the fleet. On Velprime, billions of beings held their breath. Your war crimes will be tried before a galactic tribunal. Your former subject species will be freed. Your weapons of mass destruction will be dismantled. You will pay reparations to every world you have harmed. These are not negotiations. These are requirements. Catherine took a deep breath. But we will not exterminate you. We will not kill your children for the sins of your leaders. We will not sink to the level of cruelty that defined your empire. Because humanity believes that every species, no matter how terrible its past, deserves the chance to become something better. She ended the transmission and turned to Admiral Cole. Begin landing operations. Peacekeeping forces only. Anyone who mistreats civilians will face court-martial. Cole nodded slowly. Some people will say we are being weak. They are wrong. Catherine watched the first transport ships descend toward the planet. Destruction is easy. Anyone can destroy. We spent 100,000 years learning how to kill. That is not what makes us special. She looked at the friends who had fought beside her through the darkest times. What makes us special is that we can choose not to, even when we have every reason to, even when justice would support it. We can choose mercy. General Rivera shook his head. They will hate us for this. Many of our own people will never forgive us for not finishing what they started. I know, Catherine said. But our children will understand, and their children will live in a galaxy where humanity is known for something other than war. The peacekeeping operations took months. Human soldiers landed on Vel Prime and maintained order while a new government was established. War criminals were arrested and sent to trial. Weapons facilities were dismantled. The enslaved species were given their freedom and resources to rebuild. It was not easy. There was resistance. There was hatred on both sides. Some humans committed atrocities and were punished. Some Valkyrie tried to restart the war and were stopped. The galaxy had been broken by 12,000 years of conquest, and it could not be fixed overnight. But slowly, things began to change. 50 years later, the galaxy had transformed. The former Valkyrie Dominion had become a democracy. Young Valkyrie grew up learning about the crimes of their ancestors and promising to be better. The species that had once been slaves were now equal members of the Galactic Compact, an alliance built on cooperation instead of conquest. Ambassador Grace Sullivan represented Earth at the Compact's anniversary celebration. She was 63 years old, a diplomat from Massachusetts who had devoted her life to building peace. She had seen the worst of the war and the best of the recovery. A Valkyrie journalist approached her during the ceremony. Ambassador Sullivan, many people still struggle to understand how humanity achieved so much in such a short time. Can you explain? Grace smiled. She had answered this question many times before, but she never tired of it. Your ancestors made a mistake, she said. They attacked a species that had spent its entire existence fighting itself. They united us for the first time in our history. They gave us a common enemy. She looked out over the assembly hall, where beings from 100 worlds had gathered in peace. Humans stood beside Valkyrie. Former slaves worked alongside former masters. Children of all species played together without understanding why their grandparents had ever fought. But that is not the whole answer, Grace continued. After we won the war, we had a choice. We could have destroyed you completely. We could have become the new tyrants of the galaxy. Many wanted exactly that. Why did you not? The journalist asked. Because Catherine Moore reminded us who we really are. We are not just warriors. We are explorers, builders, dreamers. We went to the stars because we wanted to find something wonderful. And eventually, we did. Grace raised her glass to toast the assembly. You gave us our extinction event. We just decided it would be the extinction of war instead of species. The journalist considered this for a long moment. Do you think your people have forgiven mine? Some have. Some never will. Forgiveness takes time, and some wounds never fully heal. Grace set down her glass. But we have built something together that neither of our species could have built alone. That matters more than old hatreds. She watched the celebration continue around her. Music played. People laughed. The galaxy was at peace. You should have left us alone, Grace said softly. But because you did not, we all found something better. The journalist nodded and moved away to interview other delegates. Grace stood alone for a moment, remembering everyone who had died to make this moment possible. Samuel Wright and his crew. Her first husband. Millions of soldiers and civilians who never lived to see the peace they fought for. She thought about Catherine Moore, who had passed away 10 years earlier. About Admiral Cole and General Rivera, who had spent their final years teaching young officers about honor and restraint. About Nicole Grant, who now ran the Compact's Exploration Division, finally able to seek out new worlds in peace instead of war. Humanity had been tested and had proven themselves, not just as warriors, but as builders of something lasting. The stars still waited out there, full of mysteries and wonders. And now, for the first time in galactic history, every species could explore them together. That was the real victory, not conquest. Hope.